Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Disappearances video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another one of these in here, this time with a little twist. This one coming from the reddit.com website, they're from the subreddit called Unresolved Mysteries. I just came across this subreddit the other day, and when I was looking at this information, I realized it's a great way of showcasing many other cases that have been discussed and continue to be discussed, in this case online, along with good information, not just on the actual posts, but also on some of the comments. So I thought I would share this one here and then see what else comes about from this subreddit. But this one has to do with a very strange disappearance of a young woman, someone who left her home/apartment and was never ever seen again. And what makes it so strange is the circumstances. You'll know about that more here in a minute, especially considering that she was about to graduate from her MBA. So definitely some interesting information to share here. And with this case, it has to do with the disappearance of Anne Denise Victoria Manchester. So let's go ahead and let's share this information here. And then as always, I'll give my own thoughts and opinions on it afterward. So here's what it says. Background. Anne Denise Victoria Manchester was 26 years old in 1980 and was a graduate student at the University of Delaware. Besides a few years of her childhood, which were spent in Southern California, Anne and her family were Delaware natives. Both she and her parents lived in the town of Newark. Anne lived alone in a third-floor apartment at the Via Belmont Apartments on Welsh Tract Road. Anne's family described her as a meticulous and organized person whose life was neat and tidy. She kept her apartment spotless and always put her appointments on a calendar. Previously, Anne worked at Claymont Steel Firm as a secretary, but had quit her job several months earlier in order to attend school full-time. The disappearance. On July 9th, 1980, Anne's parents returned from a vacation and went to visit her at her apartment. They found her apartment spotless as usual, but the door was unlocked, and Anne's purse, keys, cigarettes, lighter, and checkbook were all found inside the residence. A pair of her flip-flop sandals were underneath the table in the kitchen, and a stack of textbooks sat on the table, as did a half-glass full of diet soda. The film had formed over the top of the liquid as if it had been sitting out there for a long time. Anne was nowhere to be found, and she was promptly reported missing. Police retraced her steps and learned that Anne was last seen on June 29, 1980, nearly 10 days earlier. She was only 3 class periods away from receiving her MBA. June 29th was a Sunday, and Anne had a test on Monday, but she never made it. At about noon on June 29th, Anne was visited by a male friend who was not a student at the university. He left her home at about 12:30 p.m. This man has never been named publicly, but police have stated that he was very cooperative. He reported that Anne was wearing a t-shirt and a cut-off pair of blue jeans at this time. Unfortunately, he could provide no other details as to her whereabouts. At 2 p.m., Anne briefly talked to a female classmate on the phone at her apartment. Anne's classmate reported that nothing seemed amiss at this time. This phone call was the last time Anne was known to be alive. Anne did not take any of her tests that week and did not earn her MBA. Police found Anne's apartment completely undisturbed, and her car and all of her money and belongings were left behind. Friends, family, and neighbors reported that Anne drove everywhere she went and that she was not a recreational walker or jogger. Because Anne's flip-flop sandals were found under the table, it has even been speculated that when she left her apartment she was barefoot, but this wasn't known for sure. Friends, family, and law enforcement scoured the fields and residential areas around Anne's apartment building, but found nothing. Anne did not have a boyfriend or a husband when she disappeared, and police could find no evidence of any relationship problems in Anne's life. Anne's friends and family reported that Anne occasionally went on dates, but said she had never had a serious relationship that they were aware of. About 1 year after Anne was last seen, a local newspaper reported there was a rumor that Anne had been killed and put into a suitcase before being disposed of at the Claymont Steel Firm where she used to work, but police later said there was no evidence to support this rumor. Another rumor that circulated was that a man who lived in Ann's building on the second floor was an odd duck who had a telescope that he used to watch his neighbors. Obviously, this is something that has not been verified independently, and even if it has, it may have nothing to do with Ann's disappearance. However, I wanted to mention because it's sometimes brought up as online discussions today regarding this case. Ann's family offered a reward for information about her disappearance, but they never received any pertinent tips. Very early on, police speculated that Ann's disappearance was I can't really say that word, but perhaps it was brought on by the stress of her final week of graduate school. But since Anne was on foot and perhaps even barefoot in a residential area, this word I cannot say, is unlikely, as her body has yet to be found in the decades since her disappearance. Police and media reports now say they believe that foul play was involved in Anne's disappearance, and is believed that she was abducted or lured into a car after leaving the apartment to do something quick, like check the mail or take out the trash. Her description is as follows. Anne Denise Victoria Manchester is described as a white female with brown hair, brown eyes, and a medium brown complexion. She reportedly has a mark or growth on her left eyelid. She was 26 years old back in 1980, was 5'2", 5'3", and weighed about 110 to 115 pounds. When last seen, she was wearing denim cutoff shorts with a heart on the back and then a t-shirt. She may have also been wearing a gold Timex watch and a silver ring on her ring finger. Some sources report that this was a silver wedding band, but according to Anne's family members, now on social media, she was not married and had never been married before. She has been rolled out as 21 Jane Does, including El Kutna Annie and Newsport News Jane Doe. It's been over 40 years, but Anne Denise Victoria Manchester is still missing. Then that's it. That's everything associated with this post. There from the subreddit. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. So yes, over 40 years old when it comes to this disappearance. Lots of information that points to her not disappearing on her own, that something truly happened to her. Although, very briefly, I'll talk about one other phenomenon that I mentioned on one of the other cases as well. But yes, it looks like in this particular circumstance, it all happened sometime on June 29th, 1980. The very last people that were in some kind of communication with her was this young man who apparently was unnamed but very cooperative and presumably ruled out as a suspect afterward. He spoke to her somewhere around 12:30, at least according to his description, because he was at her apartment during that time. And then about 2 o'clock, same day, that's when she had called a female classmate and spoke to her on the phone. And then that was it. Nobody ever heard from her again until 10 days later on July 9th, 1980. Then that's when the parents went to go visit the apartment. Imagine the shock of that too. Coming inside the apartment, no doubt because they had a key to it, given to her, from her to them, and then finding her gone, seeing everything there. That's what makes it so mysterious when it comes to this disappearance, because the door was unlocked. Everything pointed to Anne being meticulous about things. The way it was mentioned as far as her putting everything on a calendar, making sure that everything was organized, the inside of the apartment being spotless, meticulous, making sure that wherever she went, it was being driven, like in other words, driving, that she would never just randomly walk anywhere. So her parents finding that door unlocked was the first of red flags, and then of course her being completely gone was the big catalyst about this case. That leads to the other thing as well. Apparently, with herself being so meticulous and so gung-ho when it comes to being in school and grades and finishing it, getting top, grades and so on, it seems like she was just a few short credits away. In fact, if anything, a few days away from graduating from an MBA. Like, in other words, finishing her final tests, and then that's it. And yet she didn't show up. That was, of course, 100% unlike her based on the information that's presented here. So that leads to, again, the theory that something nefarious happened to her. There's no way that she would have absolutely stopped just outright going to school, skipped their apartment, skipped her friends and family, and then just completely disappeared on her own. The theory, as far as the police stating that something occurred from her just randomly doing an errand, like either going to the mailbox or taking out the trash, I can see that happening, because imagine if it's late at night. Imagine if it's something like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever, and then she's out there on her own doing something like that. Somebody could have abducted her and nobody would ever know. Nobody would have ever seen whoever that was or the circumstance itself, and she would be gone at that point. Nobody would ever find out anything. I think the fact that the apartment was unlocked leads to that theory as well. I tend to side that theory too when it comes to what occurred to her. Now, as far as the other thing I was alluding to, there's the other notion that she disappeared on her own because she was about to graduate. There was this huge, I guess, anxiety or something else that was gonna hit her about, was she graduating, was she not, would she make the test, would she pass them, and so on. There was another case I was talking about on this channel a while back. I tried to find it again, but I can't remember the name. But it was also a theory with one of the young ladies, the case involving her disappearance, where she too was about to have something big happen at her school when it comes to her graduation and finishing things, and then she left. So there was a theory regarding that she couldn't quite commit to that happening, and rather than face it, she decided to disappear. So there's that very, very loose link here as well, but I don't think that has any credence to it as in this case, just like it was in the other case too. But let me know what you guys and gals think with regards to this. It's still an open case to this day, the disappearance of Denise Victoria Manchester. 40 plus years later, who knows if there'll still be something in terms of some resolution later on. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.